TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. The morning air in downtown North Shore carried a rare stillness, as if the city itself knew that today would mark a turning point for Crosswind Enterprises. At precisely 10 a.m., a sleek black motorcade threaded through the barricades and rolled onto the red carpet laid out in front of the soaring glass facade of North Shore Tower. Media crews stood ready, their cameras trained on the triple-height atrium entrance. System banners proclaimed a new era in urban living. Inside, 1,000 invited guests, investors, civic leaders, and society's elite murmured in excited anticipation. Sebastian Cross, CEO of Crosswind Enterprises, had spent the last 5 years overseeing the tower's construction, and this morning's grand ribbon cutting was meant to crown his meticulous work. In the front row sat Aurora Vale, his executive assistant, and the face of his rapidly expanding corporate image. The pair had worked side by side through countless late nights, presenting a portrait of seamless professionalism. Few in the crowd suspected the undercurrents of tension brewing behind closed doors. Just as Sebastian stepped forward to address the assemblage, his tone confident, eyes alight with pride, a hush fell. The enormous video wall behind him flickered, then displayed a series of photographs. Aurora seated across from Sebastian in a dimly lit bistro booth, their profiles angled together over a shared dessert, him leaning close as she laughed, hair brushing his shoulder. The images shifted seamlessly into a looped video, Aurora and Sebastian stepping into a private dining room through a side door, more smiles, furtive glances. Within seconds, every screen in the atrium glowed with the incriminating footage. Gasps rippled through the audience. Sebastian's prepared remarks froze on his lips. Aurora's poised mask cracked for a heartbeat. Whispers swelled into a roar as a woman's voice boomed from the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Seraphina, Marlowe announced. Striding onto the stage in a tailored ivory coat, her presence electrifying the room. As founder of the Marlowe Foundation and Sebastian's wife of 12 years, she was no stranger to philanthropy galas, but this was her stage now. "I regret to inform you that these images are proof of the betrayal that's been happening behind our backs." She gestured, and security staff emerged to position themselves beside Aurora. Hovering just beyond arm's reach, they set the tone. No escape. Seraphina's lips curved in a cold, unrelenting smile. "Sebastian Cross, the man you see before you," she continued, "has not only undermined our marriage, but placed the reputation of Crosswind Enterprises at risk." Turning to the stunned CEO, she added, "Effective immediately, I have filed for divorce. And I hope everyone here will recalculate their investments with full knowledge of who truly leads this company." Cries of shock and confusion filled the atrium. Embarrassed partners hurried to close social media apps on their phones. Journalists scrambled to capture Seraphina's every word. Aurora, still pinned center stage, lifted a trembling hand to her lips. She could feel heat flooding her cheeks as the assembled crowd stared, some in suspicion, others in judgment. Sebastian's jaw clenched. He managed to step forward, voice calm but fierce. "Seraphina, this is a lie," he said, but his words were swamped by the echo of digital shutters. Cameras from every angle clicked as freelance photographers seized the moment. Aurora's breath came in quick gasps. She opened her mouth, eyes wide with indignation. "Mrs. Marlowe, you have no right," but a security guard gently but firmly guided her back. The audience shifted, projecting their collective outrage onto her. Out in the lobby, through floor-to-ceiling windows, Isla Cross peered in, clutching her mother's hand. The little girl's big brown eyes brimmed with tears. Somewhere in the commotion, Seraphina had summoned her away. Now she stood, vulnerable and scared, at the threshold of a family rupture exposed in high definition. Sebastian's voice rose above the uproar as he addressed everyone. I understand your shock.
Shock?
Seraphina cut in, her voice brittle. Call it betrayal. He hesitated, looking at Aurora, a mixture of resolve and protection in his gaze. Then he turned back to the audience. I will address these false allegations. This evening, I will hold a press conference. Until then, please reserve judgment. With that, he offered Aurora a curt nod and led her off the stage. Cameras followed like hungry wolves as Seraphina lingered under the spotlight, victorious. In the aftermath, as the ribbon-cutting ceremony collapsed into chaos, Aurora found herself propelled down a corridor, Sebastian at her side. The final image the crowd saw, Seraphina, arms folded in triumph, and Aurora, face pale yet defiant, sprinting to catch up with the man she had devoted years to serve. Thus, what was meant to be a celebration of architectural marvel became the scene of their personal dismantling, proof that in the world of high-stakes corporate drama, one carefully leaked video can topple reputations, shatter families, and rewrite destinies in an instant. Aurora Vale barely met her own reflection as she stumbled through the lobby of North Shore Tower. The polished marble floors shimmered with morning light, but she felt as though she moved through murk. Cameras flashed around her, yet she sensed every head turn in judgment. Security shepherded her toward the private elevator. Sebastian cross-followed, his expression unreadable, eyes flicking from her to the surrounding crowd. Moments later, the elevator doors closed with a soft chime. Aurora sank against the mirrored wall, heart pounding. She could hear Sebastian's deep breath beside her. Aurora, he said quietly, we'll handle this. She shushed him. There would be no handling it. Not here. Not amid whispers of scandal and betrayal. When the doors opened on the penthouse level, his office floor, she slipped past him, her heel clicking as she made for the emergency stairwell. He called after her, but Aurora didn't look back. Every fiber of her being screamed for escape. She raced down the stairwell's spiral steps, abandoning her heels and jacket somewhere between floors 4 and 2. By the time she reached the parking garage, she had only the clothes on her back and the zippered pouch containing her ID badge and apartment key. Her hand shook as she swiped the fob to open her BMW X1. The engine roared to life. She slammed the door shut behind her, then fumbled for her phone. Dozens of texts and missed calls flooded the screen. Sebastian, human resources, her mother, and at least 3 teammates from the project she'd been heading. Each message bore the same undertone. What happened? Are you okay? She didn't answer. Instead, she keyed in the address of Mariner's Reach, the small fishing village on the coast where she'd grown up. There, at her mother Rosa Vale's blue-gray clapboard house, she might find a moment to breathe. The highway out of the city was already congested. News helicopters hovered overhead, their choppers chanting like locusts through the dawn haze. Aurora punched the accelerator. Concrete turned to rolling hills. Skyscrapers gave way to an expanse of pine forest, and then to the glimmer of saltwater glimpsed between dunes. By mid-afternoon, Aurora descended the winding County Road 17 into Mariner's Reach. The village had not changed. Pastel fishing shacks clung to the rocky shore, fishing boats bobbed in the tide pools, and seagulls cried overhead. She parked in front of her childhood home, the one with the wraparound porch and the peeling paint her mother swore to repaint one of these summers. Rosa stood on the porch, spectacles perched on her nose, hands on her hips. When she saw Aurora's car, her composure melted into relief and concern. She rushed down the steps. Honey, what on earth happened? Aurora's defenses crumpled. Tears welled as she opened the car door. Seraphina, they've painted me as the homewrecker. Rosa pulled her adult daughter into a tight embrace. You have nothing to do with their marriage, she whispered. Come inside. In the warm kitchen, beneath faded floral wallpaper, Aurora let her mother tend to her. Rosa brewed chamomile tea and brought out a plate of cheddar biscuits. The scent of rosemary from the herb garden drifted through the open window. Aurora sipped her tea shakily. She's ruthless, Aurora said between swallows. She set me up. She showed everyone that video, my saved snapshots with Sebastian, and accused me of sleeping with him. Rosa reached across the table. Those defensive cuts and edits. Any editor worth her salt would spot it for what it is, a shameless frame job. But no one seems to care, Aurora admitted. Everyone's talking about Aurora Vale. The scandal. No one knows who I really am. Her mother gave a firm nod. Then let them talk. You're home now. You're safe. We'll figure out what's real. Aurora allowed herself a small, grateful smile. In the village's gentle hush, she felt the first flicker of stability after the storm. Over the next few days, Aurora buried herself in the rhythms of Mariner's Reach. She rose at dawn to help unload lobster traps alongside old fisherman Patrick O'Neill. Her hands, accustomed to typing memos and scheduling board meetings, learned anew how to tie a net and coiling rope. Though the work was backbreaking, her mind found clarity in each repetitive motion. She spent afternoons on the pier with her younger brother Jonah, teaching him how to use the small kayak she'd learned in childhood. The ocean, which once whispered of escape, now offered her acceptance. She watched silvery schools of mackerel dart beneath her paddle. She felt her anxiety recede, replaced by something steadier. Evenings, she sat on the porch with her mother, watching the sun melt into the water's horizon. Rosa shared news from the local paper. The scandal had reached national headlines. You're trending, Rosa said with a wry smile. #2 on Google when I looked this morning. Aurora sighed. They're already inventing stories that I'm in witness protection or that I'm negotiating a buyout from Crosswind. Rosa laid a hand on her arm. Through it all, honey, you know who you are. But Aurora did not yet fully know who she would become. She had a pile of emails, consultancies offering legal help, stock analysts predicting a bruising PR struggle for her, and for Crosswind. She had at least 8 voicemails from Sebastian Cross. One afternoon, she forced herself to listen. Sebastian's voice was low with regret. Aurora, please pick up. I know how that sounds. We need to talk. I'll meet you at the Mariner's Reach Cafe, tomorrow at noon. If you can. Aurora stared at the voicemail. Meeting him risked reopening wounds. Yet something in his voice, an echo of the man who once championed her work ethic, nudged her toward replying. Nightfall came again, and with it, the coastal fog rolled in thick. Aurora walked the beach, the sand cool beneath her bare feet. Waves slapped the shore as she collected smooth pebbles, each one polished by months, years, centuries of tides. She tossed a pebble into the surf. She would not let Seraphina's poison define her. She would meet Sebastian, not to beg, not to plead, but to demand the truth and to reclaim her reputation. Tomorrow, when she walked back onto that cafe's weathered porch, she would do so with the salt spray on her cheeks and the grit of Mariner's Reach in her heart. For now, she watched the moonlight dance across the water and let the restless sea calm her racing mind. In her grandfather's fishing boat, anchored beyond the breakers, she saw the promise of a journey, one that began with flight but would lead her, eventually, back to the center of her life and career, armed with courage, with clarity, and with unwavering resolve. Aurora drove through the tangled streets of North Shore with the rising sun at her back, her knuckles white on the steering wheel as she replayed the evidence she had uncovered the night before. In the sterile glow of the data archive, she'd watched Caspian Drake slipping a USB drive into Sebastian's office desktop, then replacing the memory card in the hidden camera that captured Aurora's every private move. She'd found email threads between Seraphina Marlowe and a Caspian-operated shell address. Subject lines like Operation Eclipse, Phase 1 and timing for tonight's leak. Every fragment of metadata and server log pointed toward a single, inescapable conclusion. Seraphina and Caspian were co-conspirators, engineering a false scandal to destroy Aurora's reputation and cripple Sebastian's company so Seraphina could seize control. Her phone buzzed, Sebastian's name on the screen. She answered before the second ring. "Are you sure you've got everything?" he asked in a low voice. "I've backed it up to my personal drive and sent copies to legal. Ronald's ready to move. But I need you to be at the board meeting this morning. Your testimony will make the difference. She drew in a breath. I'll be there. I'm almost at the tower.
All right.
Be careful. She ended the call and steeled herself for what lay ahead. Minutes later, she pulled into the underground garage of North Shore Tower. Security recognized her badge and waved her through. The elevator whisked her upward. When the doors opened on level 30, she found Sebastian waiting, dark circles under his eyes, a sharp suit that had seen better nights. He offered a tentative smile. Ready. Aurora nodded, adjusting the lapel of her blouse. They entered the boardroom, where a dozen stern faces circled a long mahogany table. The founders of Crosswind's philanthropic arm sat alongside the CFO, legal counsel, and a handful of external directors. At the head of the table sat Julian Pierce, chairman of the board, his posture rigid with expectation. Sebastian, Pierce said without preamble, your wife has filed for divorce and issued public statements accusing Ms. Vale of misconduct. We need clarity now. Sebastian swallowed. I agree. That's why I invited Aurora. This meeting will lay out the unvarnished facts. He turned to Aurora. When you're ready. Aurora rose, her voice calm but firm as she clicked the remote to darken the lights. The large screen at the end of the table flickered to life, first with the time-stamped footage of her and Sebastian in the bistro. But instead of dwell on the sensational clips, she overlaid the raw security footage showing Caspian's covert arrival at Sebastian's office 2 nights earlier. The board members leaned forward, eyebrows arching in surprise as they watched the man in the baseball cap exit the stairwell on the wrong floor, navigate to the executive suite, and discreetly swap memory cards. Notice how the video feed from that camera stops for exactly 12 seconds at 9:17 p.m., Aurora continued, then resumes without a single additional frame from my private dinner. I shared dinner with Mr. Cross in the public dining hall, where there were dozens of witnesses. The private footage was never meant to capture me. Someone deliberately manipulated it. She advanced the slide. Next, phone records. This number belongs to Seraphina Marlowe. On December 2nd, at 8:43 p.m., there was a 17-second call to a burner number registered under Caspian Drake's consulting firm, Miller Consulting. 3 minutes later, that same IP address initiates a video upload to social media, where the scandalous footage emerges. A murmur spread around the table. Legal counsel, Angela Wyeth, raised her hand. Can we verify the IP mapping? Aurora nodded and tapped the remote. The display zoomed into network logs, 192.168.47.223 hosts, Miller Consulting.net. Angela let her glasses slip forward. That confirms the server from which the footage was distributed. We'll prepare subpoenas immediately. Julian Pierce's normally impassive expression darkened. Mr. Cross, you were unaware of this? Sebastian met his gaze. Absolutely. I never sanctioned surveillance on Ms. Vale or anyone. Pierce turned to Seraphina, who sat ashen-faced at the opposite end of the table. She wore a crisp ivory suit that now looked incongruous, as though she'd come to defend her foundation but instead found herself exposed. Seraphina? Pierce prompted. Seraphina's voice trembled. I assumed it was simply building security footage. When the clips surfaced, I thought they were authentic. Aurora's eyes narrowed. Those were edited. Notice that in the raw feed, the private office camera angle is slightly higher. They reframed it for dramatic effect. She clicked again, showing side-by-side stills, the original fisheye view and the cropped, color-corrected version used in the viral post. The directors collectively gasped. Sebastian spoke quietly measured. It appears someone wanted Seraphina to believe the footage was legitimate. She was the vessel for a retaliation plot. Angela interjected, with your authorization, we can seize Miller Consulting's books. Any financial transactions between Marlowe Foundation and Miller Consulting after Caspian's departure will reveal whether this was a paid assignment. Seraphina's composure finally broke. Tears welled, but her words carried no real contrition. Yes, he told me he could protect our reputation by exposing a scandal. I never knew it would go this far. No, Aurora said softly. Voice unexpectedly cold. He told you he could topple her. And he gave you the evidence you wanted, fabricated, sold to you as truth. She locked eyes with Caspian, who sat rigid as a statue. Caspian Drake profited from her pain. He averted his gaze, jaw clenched. Sebastian discreetly nodded to Ronald Hayes, who stepped forward with a small stack of printed bank statements. Here, Marlowe Foundation wire transfer, $50,000 to Miller Consulting, dated November 30th, plus a second tranche of $75,000 on December 4th. One of the outside directors, Elaine Thornton, spoke with measured astonishment. Philanthropic funds used to engineer personal and corporate sabotage. Angela sighed. That constitutes misappropriation of charitable funds, bribery, and conspiracy. We will refer this to the district attorney after the board adjourns. The room buzzed with stunned whispers as Seraphina shrank back. Julian Pierce drummed his fingers. Finally he said, "Aurora, thank you for your thorough investigation. Sebastian, you have our full support in taking legal action." He shot a look at Seraphina and Caspian. "Seraphina, until this is resolved, you are suspended from all Foundation activities. Caspian Drake, you are banned from all Crosswind properties effective immediately." Seraphina's voice cracked. "Please, Julian, my foundation does vital work." Pierce raised a hand. "This foundation depends on integrity. We cannot allow unethical behavior at any level." Then to Sebastian and Aurora. "Proceed. We'll notify the press after verifying every fact, but we will not tolerate deception." Sebastian rose and extended his hand to Aurora. She accepted it, drawing strength from the gesture. As she sat, she caught sight of Seraphina's miserable posture, Caspian's sullen scowl, and felt a quiet vindication. She had reclaimed her name, her career, and her dignity in one decisive move. As the meeting adjourned, the board members filed out in small clusters, preparing for the press conference. Aurora stayed behind with Sebastian and Ronald, who quietly arranged the next steps: public filings, evidence releases, legal motions. The sun's rays slanted through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the sprawling city below. Sebastian turned to Aurora, his gratitude palpable. "You were extraordinary." Aurora exhaled, letting the tension ebb. "Let's just make sure the truth stays out there." He offered a small, relieved smile. Truth always outlives deception. And as Aurora looked out over North Shore, its reflective towers glinting in morning light, she knew that no frame job, no false narrative, could ever overshadow the reality they had just revealed, that she was innocent, that justice would prevail, and that a new chapter lay ahead, unbroken by lies. The late afternoon sun had dipped low enough that long shadows stretched across the school's brick courtyard, turning every surface a warm amber. Aurora's phone buzzed relentlessly in her purse as she balanced a tote bag full of case files, her badge, and a tumbler of iced herbal tea. She'd just left the board meeting at Crosswind Enterprises, heart still pounding from the triumph of unveiling Seraphina's conspiracy. In those hours, she had dismantled a meticulously built web of lies, restored her own reputation, and secured the board's unwavering support. Now, her focus lay elsewhere, on Eastlaw Cross. Aurora spotted the little girl near the front gate of Harborview Elementary, a straw-haired figure in a bright yellow raincoat, even though the sky was clear. Sebastian had said he'd be there to pick her up, but the boyish grin he'd offered through the glass door of the boardroom moments earlier had been distracted, apologetic. He'd been running late on back-to-back calls about press releases, legal affidavits, and new security protocols. Aurora understood. She had responsibilities, too. Yet when she noticed Eastlaw waiting, skirt swishing around her knees as she kicked at a pebble in the sidewalk, something in the pit of Aurora's stomach twisted. A mother's intuition, perhaps. She crossed the street at a brisk pace, ignoring the honk of a BMW behind her. She would usher Eastlaw inside until her father arrived. Just as she reached the curb, a midnight blue Subaru Impreza came tearing down Summit Avenue, its wheels churning up gravel, oblivious to the speed limit or the crossing. Aurora froze, her tote bag slipping off her shoulder. The driver's foot pummeled the accelerator as if the world were about to vanish behind him. Isla, distracted by a piece of chalk on the pavement, took a hesitant step forward, one foot on the painted zebra stripe. Aurora shouted, "Isla, no," but her voice was swallowed by the roar of the engine. Time slowed. Aurora lunged forward, her heel catching on the curb. She tumbled into the street, twisting to reach the child. The car's grille was only seconds away from where Isla's raincoat fluttered. Aurora's fingertips brushed the hem. Instinct surged through her limbs. She yanked Isla backward as the Subaru screamed past, tires screeching as the driver slammed on the brakes. The gravel danced against the crumbling asphalt. Aurora landed on her hip, the thickness of her winter coat cushioning her bones. Isla crashed into her arms, sobbing, breath knocked out of her. Aurora's chest heaved with relief and shock. Adrenaline thundered in her ears. She hugged the girl tight, closing her eyes at the narrow miss. Somewhere behind them, the driver's door slammed shut, and hurried footsteps pattered away. Aurora straightened, cradling Isla against her chest. The little girl's tears soaked through her raincoat. "It's okay, sweetie," Aurora murmured, rocking her gently. "Daddy's coming." Aurora scanned the street. No Subaru, no driver returning to apologize, just the distant hum of traffic. She brushed a lock of sandy blonde hair from Isla's forehead. The girl sniffled, peering up with wide blue eyes. Aurora swallowed, forcing her voice steady. "Do you want to go wait on the sidewalk until your dad gets here? Or would you like to come with me into the Breeze block lobby?" She brushed Isla's raincoat hood over her head. "We can call him." Isla sniffed one more time, then wrapped both arms around Aurora's neck. "I'm scared," she whispered. Aurora hugged her tighter. "I know, honey. I promise you're safe now." She fished her phone from her coat pocket, unlocking it with a thumbprint blurred by tears. 3 missed calls from Sebastian. She tapped his photo icon and held the phone to her ear, one arm supporting Isla, the other cradling the phone. "It's me," Sebastian said instantly. His voice cracked with panic. "Where are you?" "Where's Isla?" "In front of the school," Aurora answered, glancing up at the looming brick facade. "We had a close call."
I saved her."
"Saved her?" His breath caught. "What happened?" "I'll explain when you get here." "She's shaken, but she's okay. You need to get here now." Aurora replaced the phone, stroking Isla's damp cheek. "Her father's on the way." "Don't move," Sebastian said abruptly. "I'm coming around back." Aurora guided Isla to the sidewalk, seating her on the low brick wall that bordered the playground. She draped her coat around Isla's shoulders, then knelt. "You're safe," she repeated, holding Isla's small gloved hands in hers. "You're okay." Isla sniffed and nodded, blinking up through tears. "Thank you for saving me." Aurora's heart clenched. "Thank you for being so brave." They sat in silence, the chill of autumn sweeping across the courtyard. Lost chalk lines and scuffed sneakers left the scene as though nothing had happened. Every parent in sight seemed unaware of the near tragedy, but for Aurora and Isla, the air crackled with its memory. Moments later, Sebastian appeared, jogging around the perimeter, cell phone pressed to his ear. At the sight of him, Isla scrambled forward, arms outstretched. He enveloped her in a fierce hug, voice trembling as he whispered her name over and over. He looked to Aurora, guilt and relief mingling on his face. He set Isla on her feet, straightened, and brushed rain-slicked hair from his forehead. "Are you both all right?" he asked, voice hushed. Aurora met his eyes. "I'm fine." She placed a hand on his arm. "She's all right." Sebastian closed his eyes, absorbing the reality. Then he blinked, drawing in a steadying breath. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here on time." He knelt before Isla, gently wiping a stray tear from her cheek. "I should have been here." He turned to Aurora. "If you hadn't," his voice cracked. Aurora shook her head. "I was here. That's what matters." She allowed herself a small flicker of triumph. In her hour of greatest need, she had become the protector, the guardian. She had proven herself not just as Sebastian's assistant, but as someone he could rely on with his daughter's life in her hands. Sebastian exhaled, straightening. I need to thank you properly. He reached into his bag, pulling out a thick envelope. Immediately after the board meeting, I authorized a comprehensive safety review for the entire company, starting with Harborview Elementary. You'll head the task force. I want you overseeing every detail. Aurora's breath caught. Me? He nodded, eyes earnest. No one else has the insight or the courage you showed today. Isla tugged at Aurora's sleeve. Can we go home now, Daddy? Sebastian scooped her into his arms and kissed her forehead. Home sounds perfect. He looked at Aurora. Will you join us for dinner? I won't let you wander the streets again. Aurora managed a soft smile. I'd like that. They walked toward the school entrance, Sebastian supporting Isla on one hip, Aurora at his side. As they passed the sliding glass doors, the custodian at the desk raised an eyebrow at the trio. No words passed between them, yet the custodian, seeing the child's wet eyes and the woman's protective stance, nodded sympathetically. Outside, Sebastian hailed a cab. Aurora climbed in beside him, careful to keep Isla settled between them. As they drove away, Aurora watched the courtyard recede, a place where danger had lurked, but also where she had risen to meet it. The cab turned onto North Shore Drive, the late-day light gilding the skyline. Sebastian leaned close. I owe you my daughter, he said quietly. Aurora glanced at Isla, secure in her father's strong arms. You owe each other. He closed his eyes for a moment. Thank you. Aurora let the words settle. In saving Isla, she had forged an unbreakable bond with Sebastian, not as employer and employee, but as two people who had witnessed the fragility of life together. The accident had nearly claimed a child. It had also reminded them what mattered most. When the cab pulled up in front of her apartment building later that evening, Aurora stepped out, feeling the first real warmth in days. Sebastian handed her a small bouquet of wildflowers, Isla's choice, more for their bright colors than any corporate propriety. He watched as she arranged them in her foyer, petals golden in the soft lamplight. I'll see you tomorrow, Aurora said, stepping back. He reached for her hand. I'll pick Isla up early. We both owe you that much. She nodded and turned inside, chest still fluttering from the afternoon's events. Behind her, through the foyer glass, she saw Sebastian lift Isla high, spinning her around, both of them laughing. The sight filled her with a bittersweet hope. In a world riddled with betrayal, she had found her purpose, to protect innocence, to stand between the innocent and harm, and to build something real and steadfast together. The next morning, the first pale rays of dawn crept into Aurora Vale's apartment as she lay awake, replaying yesterday's events in her mind. She could still feel the impact of Sebastian's invitation, delivered just before she stepped into the cab. You'll lead our safety initiative. I want you back at Crosswind. Now, as sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, she turned onto her side and stared at the ceiling, wondering what it would mean to rejoin the company that had so recently branded her a villain. By the time her phone buzzed at 7:15 a.m., she had resolved to hear Sebastian out fully. He had given her no details beyond the audit and the new Community Guardian program, no salary, no title beyond initiative leader, no promise of the old executive assistant role she'd left behind. Still, she knew this. He needed her, and in that need lay an opportunity to reclaim her place, to shape a better future for Crosswind Enterprises and the community it served. Aurora dressed with deliberation, navy trousers, a crisp white blouse, and the charcoal blazer she reserved for pivotal meetings. Over her shoulder, she slung the slim portfolio holding yesterday's board materials, pausing only to fuel the coffee maker, let the mug warm in her hands, and slip out the door. The drive back to North Shore Tower felt strangely familiar and new at once. Construction cranes dotted the skyline, cranes she had once admired from her office window. The guard at the security gate recognized her and offered a curt nod. She returned it, her heart steady. Elevator doors opened on the 30th floor, where Ronald Hayes waited in the corridor. Good morning, he greeted, adjusting his glasses. Board meeting went smoothly, no leaks. I've arranged for you to use Sebastian's former office suite. He said to clear out your old workstation and make it yours. Aurora managed a small smile. Thank you, Ronald. He offered a supportive nod.
He values you.
I know yesterday reinforced that for everyone. She crossed the threshold into the executive wing. Down the polished hallway, she passed nameplates, some familiar, some new. Her old badge still hung beside the door marked Aurora Vale, executive assistant. She inhaled and twisted the knob, but the door was locked. A moment later, Sebastian rounded the corner, briefcase in hand and expression hopeful. You found it, he said, glancing at the badge. I thought you'd moved into the conference suite. I wanted to see my old office, she admitted. It's still got the same view. He smiled and produced a keycard. It's yours again. He tapped the lock and swung the door open. Inside lay a mix of old and new, her ergonomic chair, the framed print of the Mariner's Reach pier, but also new furniture, a sleek credenza, a tablet docking station wired into the wall. A silver plaque by the nameplate read, Aurora Vale, Senior Director of Community Engagement. Aurora's breath caught. You gave me a title, she said, voice soft. Sebastian stepped in, closing the door behind him. You deserve it. You're not an assistant anymore. You're leading the Community Guardian Initiative, Crosswind's new bridge to the city and to Mariner's Reach. It covers elementary school safety, neighborhood revitalization, disaster response. It's the most important corporate social responsibility project we've ever launched. Aurora set her portfolio on the sleek walnut desk. She ran her fingers along the grain, tasting the moment. I appreciate the vote of confidence. He offered her a seat in the visitor's chair before settling into the one she'd once occupied. We start today. I've scheduled your first meeting in 15 minutes with Julia Chung, head of PR, and Marcus Alvarez, facilities director. We need rollout plans. And, by the way, he added, I authorized six-figure funding for the pilot program at Harborview, plus matching grants for surrounding districts. Her mind raced. 6 figures, Crosswind was backing her fully. Thank you, Sebastian. I'll get on it. He leaned forward, earnest. Aurora, about yesterday. I've been stubborn. I kept you at arm's length because I didn't know how to protect you without undermining your independence. But you showed courage I didn't even know I needed. His voice faltered. She gave him a gentle look. Thank you for trusting me. He nodded, relief flooding his features. Let's show them what integrity looks like. Moments later, Aurora emerged into the boardroom, her posture regal, her presence quietly magnetic. Julia and Marcus rose, offering nods of greeting. As they sat, Julia pulled up the brand-new Guardian slide deck on the monitor. Your office revamp looks fantastic, by the way, Julia said as bullet points glided across the screen. School safety partnerships, traffic calming infrastructure, emergency response training. Community Advisory Council. Thank you, Aurora replied. She tapped the remote, bringing the first slide, an image of Harborview Elementary draped in golden morning light. We'll begin with Harborview's crosswalk enhancements. Marcus, I know you have a speed bump proposal ready. Marcus cleared his throat, sliding a packet of engineering specs across the table.
Yes.
We've identified 3 priority intersections. We'll install raised crosswalks, updated signage, and LED embedded stop bars. Work can begin within 60 days with minimal disruption. Aurora nodded, then turned to Julia. PR needs messaging that emphasizes community partnership, not corporate charity. We're not just writing a check. We're investing in livelihoods and peace of mind. Julia tapped her tablet. I love that. We can launch a digital platform, My CrossGuard, where parents, teachers, and local businesses can report issues in real time, track progress, and celebrate milestones. Exactly, Aurora said, leaning forward. It's about empowerment. I want to host listening sessions at Mariner's Reach Town Hall. I'll moderate. We'll get first-hand feedback. Sebastian entered quietly at that moment, pausing in the doorway. Listening sessions at Mariner's Reach every third Thursday? He asked. Aurora glanced up, eyes bright.
Yes.
From 6 to 8 p.m. We'll provide snacks and childcare. I'll issue the invites today. Sebastian smiled and took a seat at the head of the table. I'll attend the first one, and I'll share our progress with the board in 2 weeks. The meeting unfolded with brisk efficiency. Tasks were delegated, timelines approved, budgets codified. Aurora's leadership blazed through each decision, her confidence buoyed by Sebastian's unwavering support. By late afternoon, the conference room emptied. Aurora packed her portfolio, already drafting emails in her mind. She paused to look at the nameplate, Senior Director of Community Engagement. It was more than a title. It was a promise. Sebastian joined her in the corridor. "How do you feel?" he asked. She closed the door gently. Energized, she inclined her head. "Thank you for the role, for your faith." He brushed a lock of her hair behind her ear. "Thank you for coming back." Aurora met his gaze. "I'm home, Sebastian." He exhaled, a soft smile curving his lips.
I'm glad.
As they walked toward the elevator, partners now in both mission and purpose, Aurora knew the path ahead would be challenging. They would rebuild trust, forge new alliances, and protect countless families. Yet in this moment, standing side by side, she felt the quiet power of shared conviction. In returning to Crosswind, she wasn't just reclaiming her career, she was shaping a future that honored every life touched by their choices. And that future began today. Less than 48 hours had passed since Aurora Vale resumed her role as Senior Director of Community Engagement at Crosswind Enterprises. Yet the corridors still hummed with the aftereffects of Seraphina Marlowe's betrayal. Between drafting the Harborview crosswalk rollout and finalizing the town hall calendar for Mariner's Reach, Aurora scarcely had time to catch her breath. Then came the unexpected alert. A tip from an inside contact in the Marlowe Foundation revealed under strict confidentiality that Seraphina was due for a private ultrasound at North Shore Women's Clinic. The tipster suspected Seraphina was carrying Caspian Drake's child. Aurora's first impulse was to dismiss it as rumor. After all, Seraphina's public statement had painted her as a wounded spouse lashing out in grief, not as a schemer eager for illicit entanglements. But given the depth of deception she'd already uncovered, Aurora understood one immutable truth. If Seraphina could engineer a false scandal, she could as easily conceal a real one. So, mid-morning, Aurora found herself in the clinic's hushed waiting room, wedged between expectant mothers and nervous partners. She clutched a file folder, an official request she'd had Ronald Hayes deliver to the clinic's compliance office, demanding proof of patient identity for any Marlowe Foundation beneficiary whose funds might overlap with Crosswind contracts. It was a tacit legal maneuver, not to pry into Seraphina's private life, but to confirm any financial irregularities tying Seraphina's foundation to Caspian's shell corporation, Miller Consulting. When the nurse called Marlowe, Seraphina stepped out of the consultation room in a pale blue gown, wristband snug around her wrist. Aurora's heart pounded as she recognized the crisp posture and meticulously styled hair beneath the white curtain. At Seraphina's side stood Caspian Drake, looking every bit the partner in crime. Blazer unbuttoned, dark glasses concealed his eyes, even indoors. They spoke in hushed tones, but Caspian's hand rested possessively on Seraphina's shoulder, and her hand trailed over his in a gesture that transcended mere support. Aurora watched through the gap between chairs, forcing herself to remain still. The door to the exam room opened, and a technician beckoned Caspian forward. Seraphina's expression flickered, nervous excitement or something darker, and she took his place behind him, peering over his shoulder. Aurora swallowed. This was no charity visit. Their intimacy here confirmed they were more than co-conspirators. 5 minutes later, the trio emerged. The technician offered congratulations to Seraphina and Caspian in measured tones. Aurora's breath caught. She had witnessed the reveal of a genuine pregnancy, not a staged photo op for headlines. Seraphina's cheeks glowed with triumph as she cradled her lower abdomen under the gown. Caspian's smirk bore a mixture of pride and entitlement. Aurora's pulse thundered in her ears. The implications were stark. Seraphina had not only weaponized corporate funds and Caspian's skill set to destroy Aurora, she had also woven herself into a second marriage of convenience and now expected a child. The line between vindictive spouse and calculating invader blurred dangerously. Before Aurora could retreat, Caspian turned, catching her eye. He narrowed his gaze, and for a moment, time froze. Aurora gave a polite nod and slipped toward the exit. Just beyond the door, she collided with Maud Graves, Crosswind's general counsel, summoned by Ronald to confront the clinic with the legality of patient data requests. "Aurora," Maud hissed, "what are you doing here?" Aurora kept her voice low. "I needed to confirm that Seraphina's foundation paid for clinical services through Miller Consulting." Maud's lips pressed into a thin line. "This will bury them. But you have to be careful. We're about to freeze foundation accounts." Aurora nodded, heart still pounding. "I saw her exit with Caspian." Maud's eyes went wide. "They're expecting? That's unbelievable." Aurora exhaled. "It provides motive. She wanted to control everything. Her foundation, Crosswind's assets, even a new heir who could claim inheritance rights." Maud ran a hand through her hair. "We'll need the ultrasound date stamped and a written statement from the clinic to attach to our board motion." Aurora glanced back toward the waiting area. Seraphina and Caspian had vanished through a side door marked physician offices. Aurora straightened her spine. "Then let's get it done." They hurried to the compliance desk. The office manager frowned at Aurora's legal demand but produced a stamped document confirming that patient Seraphina Marlowe underwent prenatal ultrasound on December 18th, 9:45 a.m. Billed to Miller Consulting with funds from the Marlowe Foundation. Maud tucked it away in her briefcase. By late afternoon, Aurora and Maud convened in Sebastian's office. The glow of late-day light on the floor-to-ceiling windows. Sebastian sat behind his desk, reviewing budget adjustments for the Community Guardian pilot. He looked up, saw the sealed envelope on his desk, and raised an eyebrow. Maud laid the ultrasound confirmation on the blotter. "We have proof Seraphina is pregnant, and that Miller Consulting billed her foundation for these services." Sebastian's jaw tightened. He rose and walked across the office to retrieve a glass decanter. He poured 3 fingers of scotch and handed a tumbler to Aurora, one to Maud, and kept the third for himself. "To obstetric revelations," he said wryly. Aurora accepted the glass, her hand steady despite the enormity of the news. "It explains her recklessness," she said. "She stood to gain control over our company and produce a direct heir. Then she'd have loyalty and leverage." Sebastian paced. "We knew Seraphina was ambitious, but I never imagined this." He set his glass aside. "We move tomorrow at the board meeting. I will call for her removal as foundation chair. And we'll freeze foundation accounts immediately. I want Caspian banned from all Crosswind properties, effective now." Maud tapped her pen against her notepad. "I'll draft the resolutions. We should notify the press within 24 hours. Once this is public, Seraphina's position becomes untenable." Aurora watched Sebastian's face, the relief that justice would be swift, the sorrow for what had once been his family. He turned to her. "Thank you for uncovering this. I couldn't have done it without you." Aurora raised her glass. "To truth and transparency." They drank. The amber scotch burned a promise across Aurora's throat. Soon, the truth about Seraphina's pregnancy would emerge in full daylight, alongside the facts of her betrayal. No longer could Seraphina play the wronged wife. Her own actions would become her undoing. As dusk settled over North Shore Tower, Aurora felt a fierce satisfaction. In unraveling Seraphina's final card, the unborn heir, she and Sebastian would ensure that Crosswind's future remained grounded in integrity, not in the secret alliances of those who sought to destroy from within. And as she left Sebastian's office, she understood the complexity of power and the devastating lengths to which some would go to claim it. Yet in that understanding lay her strength, the guiding compass for the battles yet to come. The winter wind whipped across the snow-dusted pines as Aurora Vale navigated the winding drive up to Oaken Lodge. Strings of amber lights glimmered along the roof eaves, and the lodge's double door stood open, inviting guests into a world of wood-beamed ceilings and roaring fireplaces. Crosswind Enterprises had arranged a small Christmas retreat for senior leadership, a gesture of goodwill after weeks of crisis management. Aurora had hesitated, but Sebastian's insistence that she join family night with Isla had won her over. She parked in the lot carved from the forest floor, shaking unseen flakes from her coat, and stepped onto the cedar planks of the entrance porch. Inside, laughter and the scent of mulled cider greeted her. Holly wreaths hung on timber posts. A quartet of violinists played Silent Night beside a grand staircase. Aurora's phone buzzed in her pocket. Once, twice. She ignored it, trusting tonight would be a brief respite. She slipped off her gloves and followed the sound of Sebastian's laughter down the hallway. She spotted him near the long oak table, holding Isla high as the child clutched a gingerbread cookie. Nearby, Julia Chung and Marcus Alvarez chatted by the hot cider urn. Sebastian caught her eye and waved. "Aurora, over here." He guided Isla onto Aurora's hip, and the three of them shared a warm group hug. Aurora inhaled the sweet tart aroma of clementines on the table. For a moment, all was well. Then Aurora's phone buzzed again, an unknown number. She frowned and tapped the screen. "Isla needs you. Come to the West Wing." The text glowed ominously. Sebastian leaned forward. "Everything okay?" Aurora forced a smile. "Just a botched delivery alert. They texted the wrong number." She set Isla down. "I'll grab another cider." Julio's outstretched cup blocked her path, so she stepped into the darker corridor beyond the ballroom. The corridor's lights were dimmer, accented with frosted sconces. At the end, a pair of heavy oak doors led to the West Wing, a quieter section housing guest rooms and the spa. Aurora pressed the door button, expecting a staff member. Instead, the doors swung open to reveal empty hallways, except for two shadows at the far end.
"Isla?"
Aurora called, heart stuttering. "I'm here, baby." No answer. She stepped forward, phone flashlight on. The hallway's wallpaper, evergreen branches, seemed to close in. She rounded the corner toward the spa entrance and froze. There, Seraphina Marlowe stood beneath the sconce's yellow glow, her face half hidden in the hood of a velvet cloak. Beside her, two bulky men wearing maintenance uniforms blocked the double doors. Both held ragged lengths of rope coiled over their shoulders. "Seraphina?" Aurora's voice trembled. "What are you doing?" Seraphina's lips curved in a slow, triumphant smile. "Surprise." She dropped her hood, revealing carefully arranged hair that still looked utterly composed. Her eyes glittered with cold fire. "Did you think you'd celebrate Christmas without a proper parting gift?" Aurora's stomach lurched. "Isla, where is she?" Seraphina gestured to the hallway behind them. Aurora peered back. Across the polished floor, Isla crouched by the spa's pool mirror, tears streaking her cheek as she tried the light switch. One of the men moved, blocking Aurora's view. "Let the child be," Aurora said, voice shaking but firm. "This isn't you, Seraphina." Seraphina advanced. "Oh, but it is," she whispered, reaching into her cloak. Aurora took a step back. "You think you're clever. Unmasking my little crusade, bringing the board down on me? Exposing my affair with Caspian." She let her words drip out. "You almost killed my reputation. It's only fair you feel the same terror I felt." Aurora swallowed. "Let her go." Seraphina shook her head. "Not until you beg me." She tossed a length of rope onto the floor with flourish. "Tie her up. Lock her in room 14B. The two men lunged. Aurora ducked to grab Isla, but they slammed her against the wall, the impact rattling her spine. One man wrapped a rough rope around Aurora's wrists, yanking her arms behind her. The other yanked Isla from the floor and stuffed her into a nearby service hallway. Aurora screamed, thrashing against the rope. Seraphina's voice echoed off the walls. "You're too proud to admit defeat. But tonight, you'll see what true fear is." She turned and strode into the ballroom, leaving Aurora half-bound and two kidnappers only feet away. Aurora craned to catch a glimpse of Isla's retreating form. The girl's red mittens glowed like beacons in the dim light, torn between freeing herself and chasing after her goddaughter. Aurora roared as the men bound her with 2 coats of rope. Her hands stung, her coat sleeve tore against the rough fibers. She kicked out once, twice, but the cords held fast. Rope's fibers dug into her skin. She forced calm into her breathing.
Think.
Sebastian had said he'd beef up security after the audit's revelations. Cameras. She trained her eyes on the ceiling, where discreet domes had been installed after the Harborview accident. If they worked properly, she shifted her weight, grinding her hand against the wall's stud. The rope's knot loosened. With one twisting motion, she wrenched her hands free. Freeing her right hand alone sent a jolt of pain up her arm, but also a rush of relief. She grabbed the rope again, yanked, and slipped her left hand out. Behind her, the spa doors clicked. Aurora spun just as one kidnapper spun toward her. Before he could lunge, she delivered an uppercut to his jaw. The crack echoed. He collapsed, swearing. Aurora crouched, yanked the remaining rope from the second man's belt and knotted it around both their ankles. They tumbled in a heap. She bolted down the hallway, sprinting toward room 14B, where she'd glimpsed Isla's frantic figure. She prayed Sebastian had provided discreet panic buttons to the guest rooms. She kept her eyes on the ornate brass numbers, dodging carts left in doorways. Room 14B. The door was ajar. From inside came Isla's muffled sob. "Aurora," the girl cried. Aurora shoved the door fully open.
Inside.
Fluffy white towels lay on the bed, a vase of poinsettias on the nightstand. Isla sat bound to a chair, ropes coiled under her. Aurora swept to her side, kneeling.
"Hey, love."
"I'm here." Isla's bottom lip wobbled. "She said you'd say sorry." Aurora's heart splintered. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here for you sooner." She cut the knots with teeth, arms trembling. "You're safe now." She scooped Isla into her arms, brushing tears from the girl's face. A sudden commotion echoed in the hallway. Shouts, footsteps, the rapid staccato of combat boots crossing the floor. Aurora's pulse hammered. She half-carried, half-dragged Isla toward the door as voices ordered. "Secure the perimeter. We have a hostage inside." The door burst open. SWAT officers in tactical gear flooded into the room. The team leader, Lieutenant Marin Steele, wheeled on Aurora. "Are you Aurora Vale?" She nodded, voice raw. "Yes."
"Mom."
"We have the men locked down in the kitchen down the hall." She gestured. 2 uniformed officers led in the disheveled kidnappers, hands cuffed behind their backs. Behind them, Sergeant Hayes slammed the door shut, face grim. "We got your panic alert and GPS ping from your cell," Steele said. "We traced your location within seconds." "Are you both unharmed?" Aurora set Isla gently on her feet. The girl sniffled, hugging Aurora's waist.
"I'm okay."
The lieutenant knelt to Isla's eye level. "You're very brave." She handed the girl a hot cocoa from a thermal cup. "Drink this." Isla took a sip, warming her trembling hands. Aurora exhaled, leaning against the wall. Sebastian burst in, eyes wild. He rushed to Aurora's side, then to Isla, lifting her into his arms in one fluid motion. He kissed Aurora's cheek and strode to the officers. "Are you two all right?" he asked, voice thick. When Aurora nodded, he exhaled. He turned to Steele. "Lieutenant, thank you for the quick response." Steele dipped her head. "We couldn't track 3 calls for help fast enough. Next time, ma'am. Keep your panic button within reach." Sebastian nodded. His gaze was fixed on Aurora, relieved, reproachful, grateful all at once. "Thank you," he whispered. "Both of you."
Isla?
Now cocooned in Sebastian's arms, looked up mournfully. "Mommy, can we go home?" Aurora touched the girl's hair. "Yes, sweetheart." Sebastian guided Aurora and Isla back toward the lobby, where guests had gathered in stunned clusters. Christmas music had fallen silent. The string quartet had packed gear. Julia Ching stood with Marcus Alvarez, mouths open in shock. As the trio passed, Whispers followed in their wake. She looks fine. Is that Aurora? She's soaked. Aurora led Sebastian and Isla out into the falling snow, toward the waiting SUVs. A bank of camera flashes met them. Reporters had been called to cover the retreat. Some still lingered, phones poised. Aurora risked a glance upward at the wreath-bedecked entrance. Christmas lights twinkled around the pillars, oblivious to the night's violence. Sebastian opened the door for Aurora and Isla. She helped Isla climb in, then slid into the back beside her. The driver closed the door, and the convoy rolled away. As the lodge receded behind them, Aurora leaned her head against the glass, inhaled the cold air's promise of closure, and watched snowflakes drift against the panorama of Christmas lights. Sebastian climbed in beside her. He draped his arm across her shoulders. "My hero," he said softly. Aurora half smiled. "Only because you trusted me." He looked ahead, jaw set. "I never want you to face danger alone again. From now on, we protect each other." Aurora squeezed his hand. Together. Outside, the night held its breath. Christmas Eve at Oaken Lodge would be remembered as the night a twisted plot almost claimed a child, and as the moment the bonds of loyalty, courage, and truth proved stronger than every hidden conspiracy. The courtroom's heavy oak doors closed with a thunderous finality, echoing through the hushed gallery as Judge Mary Ann Keller delivered her sentence. Seraphina Marlowe and Caspian Drake, once paragons of wealth, influence, and ruthless ambition, stood as fallen figures, hands bound, faces pale and strained beneath the glare of courtroom lights. 3 years each in state prison, full restitution to Crosswind Enterprises and the Marlowe, Crosswind Trust, plus mandatory community service for any remaining months. The verdict left no room for appeal. Aurora Vale felt the tension in her shoulders dissolve, replaced by a profound quiet. The months of sabotage, lies, and terror had culminated in this moment of reckoning. Outside the courthouse, winter's first thawing sun glinted off snowmelt puddles. Reporters clustered at the steps, cameras flashing, microphones extended. Sebastian Cross stood beside Aurora, his arm around their daughter, Isla, who clutched a small bouquet of paper daisies. Aurora summoned the composure that had carried her through every crisis. She stepped forward. "Today," she began, voice clear despite the swirling crowd, "we witnessed justice for deception, for greed, and for harm done to an innocent child." She paused, locking eyes with every lens aimed at her. "But beyond courtroom walls lies a community that deserves safety, trust, and unity." Sebastian added, "Crosswind Enterprises remains committed to integrity. We will continue the work Aurora has championed: traffic safety, emergency response training, and community partnerships, until every family in North Shore County feels protected." With that, they left the steps under a scattering of camera flashes, heading back to the town hall where local residents waited to celebrate the Harborview Elementary Crosswalk Project's ribbon cutting. That afternoon, Aurora stood with Julia Chung and Marcus Alvarez beneath the newly installed LED-embedded zebra stripes. Everyday citizens, parents, teachers, and PDA volunteers lined the sidewalks alongside Crosswind employees. Children in reflective vests waved handmade signs reading "Safe Steps, Bright Futures." When Julia handed Aurora the oversized ceremonial scissors, Aurora recognized the weight of symbolic victory, the anticipation of safer journeys to school, the closure of a chapter marked by scandal, and the rise of a shared purpose. "Remember," Aurora told the crowd as the ribbon fell away, "this is ours, built by all of us together. Let's guard these streets, watch out for one another, and keep the promise of safety for every child." Cheers rose, and for the first time in many months, Aurora allowed herself to grin. In the weeks that followed, the Community Guardian platform, My CrossGuard, rolled out across 6 school districts, logging over 3,000 registered users in its first month. Real-time hazard reports poured in: broken crosswalk lights, icy patches, speeding complaints. Each alert pinged straight to Marcus's facility's dashboard, which automatically scheduled maintenance crews. The collaborative loop, Residents reporting, Crosswind responding became a model for corporate civic engagement. Meanwhile, the Marlowe Crosswind Trust, once Seraphina's personal fiefdom, underwent its transformation. As chair of the governance committee, Aurora instituted quarterly financial disclosures, rotating directorships, and an anonymous tip line for ethical concerns. Donations formerly funneled through opaque channels now appeared on the public ledger within 72 hours. Philanthropic partners, schools, mental health nonprofits, food banks, returned with renewed confidence. Sebastian's own sphere of influence expanded accordingly. On the corporate side, the board instituted a standing Ethics and Safety Committee co-chaired by Aurora, ensuring that strategic decisions considered both profitability and communal impact. Sebastian's address at Crosswind's annual shareholder meeting adopted a new refrain: profit with principle, growth with guardianship. Institutional investors responded positively, driving the stock up by 12% in the quarter after the convictions and safety initiatives. Amid all this progress, Aurora and Sebastian's personal life deepened in quiet ways. Their wedding, an intimate spring ceremony on Crosswind's newly renovated plaza, wove together North Shore's skyline and Mariner's Reach's maritime heritage. With Isla as maid of honor and Rosa Vale presiding over the reading of family vows, the event blended the corporate and the personal seamlessly. Colleagues became family guests. Childhood friends from the village became partners for life's journey. Following the wedding, Aurora oversaw the opening of the Harborview Community Center, funded jointly by the Trust and a state infrastructure grant. Once a boarded-up storefront, it now housed after-school programs, a neighborhood library, and a small health clinic. On opening day, Aurora cut the ribbon as local children tumbled inside, their laughter filling the once-empty halls. She thought back to when fear had overshadowed these streets, and she felt a surge of gratitude. For the chance to build something lasting, for the trust so many reposed in her leadership, and for the lessons learned through adversity. Professionally, Aurora's influence continued to grow. In June, Fortune magazine named her to its 40 Under 40 list for pioneering a replicable model of corporate community symbiosis. Panel invitations followed. Speeches at the World Economic Forum in Davos, keynotes at CSR conferences, and interviews in global business publications. She used each platform not for self-aggrandizement, but to share the Crosswind blueprint, empower local stakeholders, integrate safety infrastructure from the ground up, and maintain unflinching transparency in both finance and operations. Throughout autumn, the 6 remaining school district crosswalks went live on schedule. Impact studies documented a 92% reduction in near-miss accidents within the first 3 months. Sensor-embedded beacons and adaptive traffic lights improved driver awareness, while volunteer safety ambassadors, retirees, high school students, and corporate staff took their roles seriously, patrolling before and after school hours. As the first anniversary of Seraphina's conviction approached, Aurora arranged a community remembrance at Ridgemont Elementary. She invited families who had supported her through the scandal, local law enforcement partners who had aided in the kidnapping rescue, and the crosswalk volunteers who embodied the City Watch ethos. Under a banner reading From Darkness, We Build Light, Aurora spoke of resilience. What began as a personal attack has become a collective victory, she said, voice carrying across the afternoon crowd. We took our fear and turned it into action. We took a moment of crisis and made it the catalyst for change. Applause echoed as the sun climbed higher, blessing the transformed school grounds. Late that day, Aurora returned by train to Mariner's Reach. She stepped off and breathed in the salty breeze, nostalgic for the village that had steadied her heart when scandal struck. She strolled past the fish market, where Jonah now worked part-time, and past the old pier, refurbished with Crosswind funds. Village children waved as she passed, and Rosa, waiting on the porch, called out, "How's my director doing?" Aurora embraced her mother. "I'm doing well. Really well." Rosa nodded toward the pier's tide pools. "Come see what they did with the sea turtle mural." Aurora followed, marveling at how the community she'd fled in disgrace now thrived with renewed purpose. The mural's vibrant colors spoke of hope, resilience, and shared identity, much like Aurora's own journey. That evening, Sebastian joined her, and they dined on fresh cod at the Harborview Cafe. Laughing as Isla recounted her first day as junior guardian volunteer, handing out safety whistles to classmates. Aurora listened, heart full, then excused herself for a moment. She stepped outside and sent a brief text to Maud Wyeth. "We did it." Maud replied almost instantly, "Yes, you did. Proud to serve." Aurora tucked her phone away and returned inside, where Sebastian extended his hand. They danced to a local trio playing "What a Wonderful World," swaying beneath strings of white lights hanging from the ceiling rafters. As the melody wound down, Sebastian whispered, "The world feels wonderfully different." Aurora rested her head on his shoulder. "It does, and it's ours to protect." Outside the cafe's front window, the moon rose over the harbor, its silvery path stretching across the water. Aurora watched the reflection shimmer, knowing that the true light, the light of community, justice, and compassion, would never fade, even through the darkest nights. Together, they stepped out into the cool night, ready for whatever lay ahead in the new chapter they had so bravely authored. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.